Hey guys, I'm sorry, we just got cut off here, a little internet blip. But we were just about to talk about how specifically to deal with intense pain during separation or divorce. So we're going to jump right back in there. So, guys, I was just explaining how the logical, rational brain does not have connections to the limbic system. And the limbic system is where all of that painful, overwhelming emotion is happening. So that means we can't logic or reason or rationalize our way out of painful emotions. We have to use a different part of our brain. So that part of the brain is the medial prefrontal cortex. It's right there in the center of our head. And this is the part of the brain that is responsible for conscious awareness. So if right now I asked you, what does your right knee feel like? You could focus on your right knee and you can feel it. You might not be able to describe it or tell me how it feels, but you have a sense of what that feels like. That part of your brain does have direct connections to the limbic system, which means it can communicate with the subconscious source of your emotions. This is incredibly powerful, you guys. If you have ever been frustrated by that disconnect between what you think and how you feel, well, I know it's going to work out, or intellectually, I understand why this happened, but emotionally, I'm so angry or I can't let it go. If you've ever felt that conflict between what you believe and what you feel, this is the magic secret. You have to activate this awareness, this conscious awareness part of your brain. When you do, it talks to the limbic system and it helps the nervous system regulate and rebalance. So it can bring you out of fight or flight. It can bring you out of freeze. And when that happens, when your nervous system is calm, emotions are manageable. Emotions are only overwhelming or intolerable when our nervous system responds to emotional pain by going into fight or flight or freeze. So how do we do this? It's actually really, really simple. You just focus your intentional awareness on the emotion. So if you were watching earlier, we talked about how emotions are physical sensations, just like any other physical sensation, which means you can pay attention to them. So whatever you're feeling right now, say you're feeling loss or grief, I can ask you to find it in your body. Where do you feel grief? And if you take a couple of deep breaths and you slow down and you look down into your body, you can find it. Maybe it's in your chest. Maybe it's in your throat or coming up into your eyes. Where do you feel grief? Just notice it and watch it. And see if you can be really aware what else is happening. What happens as soon as you notice the grief? What does your brain do? Does it start trying to think about something else and distract you? Does it start telling stories about the grief? Being like, oh my gosh, you're right. I can't believe we lost this and it hurts so bad and things were so good and I can't believe I did that. Does it start talking and talking and talking? Oh, good, guys. We've got a couple of you here in the chat. Welcome, Charlie and Omar. Okay, so Charlie, you're saying it's in my chest and lower back. Yeah, okay. And Omar, you're welcome. So Charlie and anyone else on, do this with me. Feel it in your chest and lower back. And notice, what does your brain do? How does it respond? Does it want to tell the story? Does it want to get away from it? Whatever your brain does, just take a deep breath and let it know that you're just going to stay with the feeling for the next 60 seconds. And then just watch it. Where is it in your chest? How big is it? What does it feel like? Does it move? Can you find the edges of that sensation? Just watch it. This is going to be hard. Your brain is going to want to be more engaged. It's going to want to tell a story, or it's going to want to escape because this isn't comfortable. It's not a good feeling. You don't want to feel it, but you can feel it. And allow yourself to feel that. As you do that, you are activating that medial prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that allows you to communicate directly with the limbic system. So we've got a couple of comments in the chat here. I don't miss my ex-wife, but I miss her. It's confusing, I know. Yeah, so Skippy, I don't know if you were on with me earlier, but the brain is totally capable of holding on to two completely contradictory beliefs and believing both of them fully. right? And this is often the disconnect that happens between what we know and what we feel. The brain's like, I don't miss her. I'm better off without her. It wasn't working. It's good that it's over. The heart's like, but I want her. I miss her. Right? And some of that is on a physiologic level. This idea that we've lost a primary relationship. Humans don't like to lose primary relationships. For most of human history, we were reliant on those relationships. Right? We needed those relationships in order to survive. So losing one is terrifying. It's painful. We want it back. Right? And so we do get these really confusing contradictions between what we think and how we feel. And that confusion can actually make the emotional pain less, well, it can make it harder to bear, less tolerable, because it freaks us out. We're like, well, I know better, but I still feel this. And if me knowing it doesn't change how I feel, then I have no control over how I feel. And what if I feel like this forever? And what if I can't take it? And what if I can't tolerate it? What if, and it gets really scary. And so we start to freak out. That nervous system activation takes us to a place where we really can't stand what we're experiencing anymore. And that is when the emotional pain becomes intolerable. Charlie describes it as daunting and heavy. Okay, so Charlie, here's what I want to tell you. There are ways to make it less daunting, less heavy, more manageable. And that's what we're talking about a little bit here today. It's about activating the right part of your brain so that when the emotion comes up, you know that you have the skills to sit in it, to be in it, and to get through it. So something for you to know about emotions. There's been a really fascinating couple of studies done at Harvard by this brain researcher, Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor. What she found is that an emotion, if you don't feed it and you don't fight it, so you don't ruminate or relive it, you don't resist it or try to get away from it, if you just let it be there in your body, that emotion lasts for about 90 seconds. That's it, 90 seconds. You can do anything for 90 seconds. I imagine most of you have had an injury at some point that was excruciating for way longer than 90 seconds, and you were able to handle that. The problem with our emotions is that we tend to grow them. And we grow them in one of two ways. We either grow them by telling ourselves stories that makes it bigger, right? The ruminating, the reliving, or we grow it by resisting it. And resistance really does grow an emotion, and it's kind of interesting because emotions are messengers, right? They are physical sensations in the body that tell us something we need to know. Just like hunger says, hey, you need to eat or you're going to starve to death. When we're tired, hey, you need to sleep. Emotions tell us about what we need. They tell us about potential dangers that we're facing. And sometimes they're not accurate. And just like if you have been eating way too much sugar and you have an overgrowth of yeast in your digestive system, and then you go and stop eating sugar, you are going to get powerful cravings for sugar, right? It's a message coming from your body, but it's not actually helpful or accurate. Sometimes our emotions are like that. They're just a habit. They're a conditioned response, and they're not really telling us about something important. But other times they are. Anger is there to tell us that a critical boundary has been crossed, that we need to stand up for ourselves, that we need to fight to protect ourselves. Anxiety is there because there's an uncertainty coming up that maybe we're not prepared for. And we could be in trouble if we don't pay attention and take the appropriate steps to get ready for what's coming. Emotions have a purpose. They're there to tell us something. And so when we resist a feeling, when we're like, no, that's too painful, that's too uncomfortable, that's too difficult, we're ignoring the message. And if that message is important, well, that emotion is just going to grow. So usually we grow our pain by fighting it or feeding it, when if we can learn to just be present in it for not very long, for just 90 seconds, that emotion will move through us and pass. Omar has got a comment here. My ex wants the benefits of a relationship, but doesn't want a relationship. Plays on my guilt and makes me frustrated. Yeah, this is a boundary question, I think, here, Omar, right? But it's hard because if you still miss her or still want to be with her, it's going to be hard to say no when she wants the benefits of a relationship. But at the same time, you're not getting what you need, right? You want a real relationship, not the kind that she's offering. And unfortunately, this happens a lot. And I think it can be really hard to draw those clear lines, those clear boundaries, if you aren't feeling very emotionally stable yourself. And so ultimately, when we're talking about emotional regulation, that is our goal. It's to create some stability so that instead of being on this roller coaster, things start to even out and you feel a little steadier. And that way, when she comes and is asking you for a relationship that's not a relationship, right, that doesn't meet your needs, and actually probably leaves you more hurt afterwards than you were before, you'll be able to set boundaries for yourself because you'll be able to manage the emotions you're feeling. But when those emotions are out of control, when your nervous system is activated constantly, well, then you can't say no, because if you do, you're going to feel horrible and you can't handle that emotional intensity, that emotional pain. So, guys, I do want to offer to anyone who's on this call who wants to go deeper into emotional regulation work, I have an emotional regulation training program. It's takes about 30 days to go through if you really sit down and do the work. It is focused on teaching you how to activate that medial prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that can talk right to the emotional centers, to the limbic system, and help you calm your nervous system. And as we've been talking, what that does is it allows you to smooth out the ride. So that instead of just being taken up and down on that roller coaster, you feel more steady. It does not make anger go away. It does not make pain or guilt or frustration or loss go away. It makes the pain manageable, and it stops it from hijacking your life so that you can make good decisions, set clear boundaries, go back to work, take care of your kids, and move forward with your life. So I have this 30-day training. It's normally a $500 training, but right now I'm offering it for free when you join the Better Beyond Divorce community. So before we got cut off, I had the link to that in the chat, and I'm just going to grab it here for you guys if anybody is interested in deeper step-by-step support in really learning how to help that nervous system settle, calm down, and render all of these emotions manageable. Please click that link. There will be more information there about how to join that program for free. For today, there's a couple of things I want to give you, just tools that you can use. So one is that really simple exercise I asked you to do a few minutes ago, where you locate the feeling in your body and then you watch it. And you really notice, is my brain trying to ruminate, relive things, feed it? Is it trying to run away? Stop this emotion, get away from it. Watch for your brain's reaction, and then just come back to the feeling. How big is it? Where is it? What color is it? Does it move? How intense is it? Basically, you're asking the question, how do I know that I'm guilty? How do I know that I'm sad? Where does that sensation live in my body? What physically tells me that I'm feeling it? And stay there for, I asked you earlier to do it for 60 seconds. In the beginning, you're probably going to want to stay there for about 2 minutes. Just watch it, feel it, notice it. If you can stay in awareness and stay watching and not give in to the ruminating, the reliving, the distracting, the buffering, the numbing, if you can really stay focused, what you're going to notice is that the emotion changes. It might not go away, but it's going to change in some way in 90 seconds. That's what the research tells us, that flood of neuropeptides, of hormones, of neurotransmitters, that makes us feel an emotion. So we get triggered, something happens, we get a flush of emotion. It lasts in the body for 90 seconds if we don't feed it or fight it. That's what Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor's research shows us. So this exercise is a way to explore that for yourself. If I can really, not forever, just for 2 minutes, not feed it, not fight it, what happens? Does your body respond the way the research suggests it will? You might have to do this exercise a few times, because if you're like me and most of the people I've worked with, your brain really likes to feed and fight emotions. It's really good at that. So you're probably going to have a hard time staying in awareness until you practice it. So that's one tool you can use. There's another tool that is going to seem too simple, but I would strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to practice it if you're feeling overwhelming, intense emotional pain around a separation or divorce. And it is to create a conscious breathing practice. I know it seems way too simple. What you're feeling is way beyond a little bit of breath work. But here's the thing. The reason the pain is overwhelming is because your nervous system is in a fight or flight or a freeze state. The nervous system is doing that without your conscious intention, without your conscious control. Most of the nervous system reaction happens autonomically, which means we can't consciously control it. There's one element of that nervous system activation that we have direct conscious control over, and that is our breath. We can't control our heart rate. Well, maybe some monks who have meditated for years can. I can't control my heart rate. I don't think you probably can. I can't control the flood of adrenaline or cortisol that accompanies that reaction. I can control my breathing. And when I slow down my exhale, that sends a signal to my limbic system that says I'm safe. And there's a whole feedback loop in the nervous system that starts to calm the rest of those systems down, right? That'll start to calm the heart rate. It'll start to reduce the cortisol and adrenaline levels. So your breathing, simple as that seems, it is the one fast track tool that you have to influence your nervous system. And if you can calm your nervous system, your emotions will become more manageable. And something else really cool happens when you calm your nervous system. Your vision expands. You get access to your full prefrontal cortex, to all of your logic and rational experience, the part of your brain that most of you probably really value, right? The part that's good at problem solving, that sees things logically, clearly, rationally, that isn't overwhelmed by emotion. That part of your brain comes back online when your nervous system calms down. So even though it seems far too simple, if you're dealing with intense pain, I would strongly encourage you to, for 7 days, do a breathing practice several times a day for at least 5 breaths. Just lengthen your exhale. That's it. Make it longer. And stay aware. What happens when you do that? What changes? Can you start to notice the ways that your nervous system responds? Okay, guys, we've got a couple of notes here in the comments. When can I start seriously dating? This is such a good question, and one that is ripe with controversy. Honestly, you can start dating today. This question of when am I going to be ready? What does that mean? Like, what would you have to do to be ready? Would you have to no longer think about your ex? Would you have to not be in pain? Like, what specifically does it mean to not be ready? I see dating go a lot of different ways. It's all about the mindset that you bring to it, your intention in dating. I have seen people date immediately at the beginning of their separations and do really, really well. I have seen people not date for years and do really, really well. It really depends on the mindset you bring to dating. It can totally backfire, or it can be really healing. The reality is that human nervous systems evolve to co-regulate, which means that when we feel connected to other people, we feel better, we feel stronger, we feel braver. So dating, that connection, can actually be really healing. But it all depends on your intention, because 2 things commonly happen when people start dating after divorce. One is that they jump in with the thought that this is going to fix everything. And they use dating as a way to distract from their pain instead of dealing with their pain. And remember what happens when you buffer, numb, or distract. Those are all ways of resisting what you feel, and they're going to grow the emotion. So if you use dating as a distraction or a buffer for your own emotional pain, eventually those emotions are going to come out even stronger, even more overwhelming. The other thing that I often see happening with dating is that people take it really personally, right? They use the dating as a source of validation, and then they can't handle rejection if it comes. And so that is a self-confidence, a self-image, a self-trust issue. And the people that I see dating, especially early after a divorce, who are successful with it, They don't let dating replace their inner work. They stay focused on learning to regulate their nervous system and manage their emotions. They stay focused on building a strong relationship with themselves, on healing their self-esteem, their self-confidence, on building self-trust and self-compassion, and they're dating. And when you have that mindset around dating, it can actually be really informative because you're going to get triggered. That other person is going to do things, just going out on dates or making an online dating profile is going to bring up all kinds of feelings. But if you're being intentional in your inner work, you can stop and notice and identify the feeling and understand it and figure out where it's coming from. And it will give you a lot of insights into what still needs to be healed and where your work is. So I actually think dating can be a resource, a tool in healing. But for you, Skippy, is if you're really not feeling ready for dating, then you need to work in two areas. One is emotional regulation. The other is your self-image, self-confidence. And that really boils down to your self-talk. How do you talk to yourself in your brain? If you can get solid in those two areas where you feel comfortable handling the emotions that come up, and you know that whatever emotion comes up, you're going to be able to deal with it. If you really know that in your bones because you've practiced activating the right parts of your brain to do that, and you've cleaned up your self-talk, you're nice to yourself, you have compassion for yourself, you trust yourself, if you've made that internal relationship healthy, I think then you'll feel a lot more ready for dating. Let's see, there's another comment here in the chat, Charlemagne. There's a part of me that wants to go there even when it is so painful. The conflict is all I have left to be connected to her. You're welcome, Skippy. I hope that was helpful. That's a really good insight. The conflict is all I have left to be connected to her. Yeah, sometimes we keep ourselves kind of tortured because the alternative is to let go and grieve. So this is also an emotional regulation question, because what you're telling me there, right, that the part of me wants to keep going kind of back to her, even though I don't get what I need from her, even when it's so painful. What you're telling me is that as painful as that is, your brain believes that the grief, the hurt of loss, if you let go and moved on, would be worse. And it's imagining the pain of letting her go is going to be more intolerable than the pain of having this like non-relationship relationship with her. And so you're in a place where you're choosing between really painful or unbearably painful. So this is an emotional regulation issue. We need to help your nervous system settle, calm, be clear, so that the emotions you feel become manageable. We need to get to a place where grief and loss is something you are not only not only able to feel, but willing to feel, because you know you can handle it. So I would recommend for you, if you're open to it, go ahead and click that link when we're done with this call. Check out the emotional regulation training program. It goes a lot deeper than the tools that I can share on this call. It's really going to give you that 30-day systematic process for training your nervous system. Well, it's not really training your nervous system. Your nervous system knows how to rebalance. It knows how to come out of fight or flight. It's more training your conscious mind to not interfere with that process by feeding and fighting your emotions. And I think when you learn how to do that, you're going to find that all of these pains become more manageable. And I think what you'll realize is that the pain of letting go and having to go through the process of grieving the end of this relationship is actually going to be far less painful than this continual re-injury you're experiencing in this like non-relationship that you're in with her. Okay, so I hope that that's helpful. All right, guys, so I think for today, that's everything I have on emotional pain and emotional regulation. Please do check out this emotional regulation training program. The link is here in the chat, and it'll be in the video description too. Like I said, that's usually a $500 program. Right now, I'm offering it for free if you join the Better Beyond Divorce community. And that's also a place where you are going to get a lot of emotional support. And that's the other thing with this emotional regulation in the human nervous system. I've mentioned a couple of times that human nervous systems co-regulate. It just means that when we feel connected to each other, it's easier for us to come out of fight or flight or freeze states. It's easier for us to rebalance our nervous systems, and it's easier to tolerate emotions. And there is so much research behind this. It's actually really, really cool. People even view mountains as being smaller and easier to climb when they're with other people, when they feel connected. So inside that community, you're going to find some of that emotional connection that's going to make it easier to allow your nervous system to rebalance. And then you're also going to get a lot of good tools for doing that nervous system work that's going to make these emotions more manageable. And as we've been talking about, when that happens, you have a much more stable foundation from which to deal with these issues, right? Questions about dating, about really letting go and breaking maybe some of these toxic patterns. Let's see, there's just one more question here in the chat. I know your work primarily focuses on men dealing with post-divorce struggles. Do you have any advice for men who are in an unhealthy or abusive relationship that we know we need to end but can't? Yeah, actually, I do. So honestly, some of this is going to be the same. Take care of your nervous system, learn how to balance it and regulate it, and get connection, get support, get community. So my question for you, who's asking that question, is who is in your life? Do you have your A team behind you? And if you don't, I would encourage you to prioritize gathering those people. Therapist is a great one to have on your team. Family members, friends who care about you, people that you can, the A team is people that you can call day or night when you are in an emotional crisis. People that will help you calm your nervous system. The thing about unhealthy or abusive relationships, you guys, is that they're doing something for you. They're meeting a need that is not getting met elsewhere. And just like any addiction, honestly, until you meet that need, you're not going to be able to break away from the thing that you're addicted to. Right? So in this case, it might be this abusive relationship, but there's a need that's being met there. Maybe it's a need for connection. Maybe it's a need for love. Maybe it's a need for attention and feeling seen or wanted, even if it's in a negative light. It might also be a lot of people who get stuck in these unhealthy or abusive relationships have some trauma history from childhood. And when we're children, we learn how to give and receive love. And unfortunately, a lot of children learn that love and pain are connected, or they learn that they only receive attention when they're in trouble, when someone is hurting them or is upset with them. And so if that has been your experience as a child, then as an adult, you might find yourself drawn to relationships where love is tied to abuse, because that's the way that you learned love exists. That's how you learn to give and receive love. So there's a lot of reasons that we can find ourselves drawn to or stuck in those relationships. Underneath it, there's a need. And there's usually two conflicting needs in an abusive relationship, right? There's a need for safety and there's a need for love. And for whatever reason, whatever your history and experiences have been, in your brain, you've learned that love is connected to being hurt. Right? And so you can't meet both needs at the same time. You can't have both love and safety. Right? And that's a really difficult and stressful position for a human being to be in. It's hard on our nervous systems. And we see it, but we can't break free because the need for the love and connection is stronger than the need for safety. Right? And we're afraid we are not going to get it elsewhere. So I guess it's a lot of little different snippets there. I think my main piece of advice would be to get curious about what need is being met for you in that relationship. And then start to ask yourself the question, how can I meet this need for myself? Who else can help me meet this need for me? Is it a need for connection? Okay. Doesn't have to be romantic connection, doesn't have to be sexual connection. How do I feel more connected? How do I feel more connected to people? How do I feel more connected to nature, to God, if you have a religious or spiritual practice, to an animal? Start to cultivate connection, feelings of love. It might even be internal. How can I connect with myself more? How can I love myself more? What is the need that's not being met that my brain currently thinks I can only get through this abusive or toxic relationship? And just another thought with that is that the other person is caught in that cycle too. And that doesn't make it right, doesn't justify abuse. It just tells us something about their trauma, right? That they also learned that love and pain are connected, and they haven't been able to break free from that. So thank you for asking that question. And uh, my hope for you is that you will seek support for yourself, because the more connection, the more support that you have in your life, the easier it is going to be for you to start to move away from that relationship and into healthier forms of connection. Okay, guys, thank you all for joining me. I know this was like a last minute impromptu live and we got cut off halfway through, so I really appreciate you being here. I am going to go live every day for the next 3 days. I forget exactly what times. I posted the schedule on the community tab on my YouTube channel. And here in a few minutes, I'm also going to go ahead and I'll make a little watch page for each of those lives. So if you have any questions, please join me again. And you're also welcome to drop a question in the community and I'll address it when I go live over the next couple of days. All right, guys, thanks for being here and I will see you again soon.